Have you ever stood in a room where someone spoke so fast, so loud, that their words felt like a storm, and yet, beneath all that noise, something in you stayed still? That silence wasn't weakness, it was clarity. Because sometimes the calm observer sees what the fast talker hides. Stay with me, and you'll learn how silence becomes strategy. As we step into the first chapter, picture this: a crowded room, the air thick with voices fighting to be heard. One person speaks faster than the rest, their words spilling like bullets, each one meant to claim territory in the minds around them. Their sentences blur together until meaning drowns in momentum. You've met that kind of person before, the one who mistakes speed for strength, volume for truth. But if you've lived long enough, you've learned that noise is not power. The ones who truly see, who truly lead, are rarely the ones speaking the loudest. They are the ones who wait, who watch, who listen. There is something fascinating about fast talkers. They move with a rhythm that feels rehearsed, as if silence itself might expose them. They don't pause because pauses invite reflection, and reflection demands truth. And truth is the one thing they cannot control. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." That calmness, that ability to remain unmoved while others rush to fill the air, is where your advantage lives. The storm of words may impress the crowd for a moment, but it's the silent observer who truly commands the field. I remember sitting across from a man who could sell ice to the frozen. His voice never rested, his eyes darting with a kind of restless confidence. He praised himself between breaths, dressed manipulation as charm, and thought his speed would leave no space for my doubt. But I had learned something he hadn't, that silence makes people reveal themselves. So I let him talk. I didn't rush to answer, didn't interrupt his performance. I simply watched. And with every sentence, his story began to contradict itself. The mask slipped, not because I challenged him, but because he couldn't stand the mirror of my stillness. Silence made him trip on his own lies. That moment taught me what no book ever could. When others race to speak, you win by staying still. You win by refusing to dance to their rhythm. Fast talkers thrive on reaction. They seek to control your tempo, to drag you into their performance, because control of pace is control of perception. When you slow down, when you breathe, when you answer on your terms, you shatter the illusion of their power. Seneca once wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." That same principle applies to manipulation. The greatest defense against persuasion is pause. When someone floods you with words, don't rush to respond. Let their own noise exhaust itself. Silence is not absence, it's pressure. It makes them feel the weight of their own voice. It forces them to see that you are not easily moved. In that quiet, you are no longer reacting. You are leading. There is a reason the ancients spoke so little. In Rome's Senate, the wisest were often the last to speak, not because they feared opinion, but because they understood the value of observation. They watched how emotion swayed the unsteady. They studied how pride made men contradict themselves. And when they finally spoke, their words landed with the weight of measured thought. The Stoics knew that control of speech begins with control of the self. You cannot master conversation until you've mastered impulse. Think about your own life, the meetings, the arguments, the moments where someone tried to dominate you with confidence. How many times did you feel the urge to interrupt, to defend, to prove? That's the trap. Fast talkers set it by design. They know that silence unnerves the insecure. But once you realize that silence is not a void but a blade, everything changes. You start to see through the performance. You start to hear what they're hiding between their words, the cracks, the inconsistencies, the desperation to be believed. There's an art to listening deeply. It's not passive, it's not compliance, it's strategy. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." Those words aren't just philosophy, they're instruction. When you truly listen, you stop reacting and start decoding. You notice the patterns, the tones, the contradictions. You see the insecurity behind the showmanship. You realize that fast talkers don't build trust. They buy time. They rely on speed because truth, when examined slowly, falls apart. I once met a leader who barely spoke in meetings. People mistook his silence for detachment. They filled the air around him with projections of their own importance. But when he finally spoke, every head turned. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush. He said one sentence, short, clear, precise, and the entire room shifted. That's when I understood. Silence is not the absence of speech. It is the preparation of power. If you want to outsmart fast talkers, learn to see silence as your weapon, not your weakness. When someone floods you with words, don't drown, anchor yourself. Breathe. Let their need to dominate reveal what's really driving them. The one who needs to be heard the most is often the one who feels unseen. Let them expose themselves while you remain unshaken. This is how the Stoic wins, not by crushing others, but by mastering himself. In a world obsessed with being heard, the rarest skill is the ability to stay silent and see. People will tell you silence is passive, that it's surrender. They're wrong. Silence is discipline. It's control. It's the refusal to let noise define you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." The same truth applies here. Don't argue to prove your worth. Embody it. Don't compete with noise. Rise above it. So the next time you find yourself across from someone who talks too fast, who sells too hard, who tries too eagerly to win your approval, don't match their energy. Let them run out of breath. Let them mistake your quiet for confusion, your stillness for submission, because when their words finally fade, you'll still be standing, calm, composed, and in control. And as the room grows quiet, as their momentum falters and all eyes turn toward you, that's your moment. Not to speak louder, but to speak wiser. One sentence delivered with clarity will do more than 100 spoken in haste. That's the Stoic way, to win not by shouting, but by mastering the silence between words. This is where your power begins. In the stillness between their noise and your truth. In that space, everything slows. You see what others miss. You hear what's not said. And from there, you strike, not out of anger, not to prove, but to remind the world that calmness is the final form of strength. Moving into the second chapter, imagine the noise fading, and what remains is the sound of your own breath, steady, controlled, deliberate. The storm of words around you begins to lose its force. The people who once dominated the room with their endless chatter suddenly look smaller, as if their power depended entirely on the noise they made. This is where the balance shifts, not because you spoke louder, but because you refused to compete. In moments like this, silence becomes more than an absence of sound. It becomes a form of presence, a living force that unsettles those who depend on chaos. When you pause before responding, the fast talker begins to falter. They expected speed, not stillness. They wanted control, not composure. And in that brief moment of hesitation, their rhythm breaks. You can see it in their eyes, the flicker of uncertainty, the tiny crack in the mask of confidence. This is the Stoic pause. The moment where clarity enters through the doorway, that noise leaves open. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." That is what the Stoic pause looks like in real life. You stand firm while words crash around you. You don't resist with equal force. You absorb, observe, and wait. In that calmness, you reclaim your ground. The fast talker begins to drown in their own momentum, while you remain the rock, unmoved, unbothered, unshaken. I remember a boardroom once filled with voices fighting for dominance. The air was sharp with ego and ambition. One man in particular spoke fast, throwing out figures, arguments, and opinions like weapons. Every time someone tried to reply, he would interrupt, outpace, overwhelm. The room bent toward his rhythm, except one person. She sat there in quiet composure, pen resting on the page, eyes steady. She didn't rush to answer or defend herself. She simply let him finish. The silence after his last word was suffocating. Then she looked up and said, "Are you finished?" It wasn't anger. It was authority cloaked in calm. The room shifted. His flood of words had met the wall of her stillness. And suddenly, everyone else started to listen to her. That moment stayed with me. Because silence, when intentional, carries more gravity than speech ever could. It's not passive, it's control made visible. Most people are terrified of silence, they see it as emptiness. But to a Stoic, silence is a weapon sharpened by discipline. When you master it, you no longer speak to prove, you speak to end. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The fear of silence is one of those imagined sufferings. We fear that pausing will make us look uncertain, that not replying will make us seem weak. But in truth, silence is the mark of inner strength. The undisciplined rush to speak because they cannot bear the weight of their own thoughts. The disciplined wait because they've already conquered the storm within. Let's be honest, our world worships speed. People measure intelligence by how fast you respond, not by how deeply you think. They mistake noise for clarity and momentum for mastery. But Stoicism reminds us that wisdom isn't born in haste. It's forged in the space between impulse and action. The pause is where judgment matures, where emotion cools, where clarity forms. In the pause, you decide who you will be before you act. There's an ancient story about a general who faced a rival commander known for his arrogance and silver tongue. Before every battle, this rival would send messengers to taunt, provoke, and throw the general off balance. But the general never replied. He simply looked at the messenger, nodded, and walked away. His soldiers grew restless, thinking their leader weak for not responding. Then came the day of battle. The rival general, used to dominating through words, underestimated him. He arrived unprepared, expecting to intimidate once again. But the silent general struck swiftly, decisively, without warning. His silence had not been surrender. It had been strategy. When the noise died, only one army remained standing. That story holds a timeless truth. The one who controls the silence controls the outcome. When others expect reaction, give them patience. When they demand defense, give them composure. When they seek chaos, give them stillness. This is not retreat, it's command. The Stoic doesn't win through confrontation, but through control. The pause also changes what your words mean. When you finally speak, every syllable lands with precision. People lean in because they've learned that your silence is not emptiness, it's preparation. You've trained them to value your voice because you don't waste it. Epictetus said, First, learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. That's the discipline most people lack. They speak first and think later, hoping their words will catch up to their thoughts. But the Stoic reverses that order. They let thought mature in silence until the words are undeniable. I've seen conversations where silence ended the argument before it began. A friend once told me of an encounter with his superior, a man known for tearing others apart in meetings. When it was his turn to be criticized, he didn't defend himself. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, with a calm so steady it made everyone uncomfortable. When his superior ran out of steam, my friend simply said, "Are you done?" Then he laid out his solution in 3 sentences. Simple, rational, irrefutable. The room fell quiet. The superior nodded. The storm was over. Not because of aggression, but because silence had drained the noise of its power. This is the essence of the Stoic pause. It's not just a technique, it's a mindset. It's the realization that time is an ally, not an enemy. When you slow down, you give yourself the chance to see clearly, to strike with precision, to live with intention. Those who rush become slaves to reaction. Those who wait become masters of themselves. So the next time someone tries to overwhelm you with speed, with clever words, rehearsed lines, or emotional pressure, don't fight their tempo. Slow it down. Let them drown in their own urgency while you stay anchored in your composure. Watch how silence changes the air in the room, how it bends the conversation back toward reason. And when you finally speak, do it like a blade drawn after patience, a single deliberate motion that ends the chaos. Because the Stoic pause isn't about waiting for your turn to talk, it's about reclaiming the power that others waste on noise. That's how you turn silence into command. That's how you shift from being a listener to being the one who defines what comes next. And as we move forward, remember this: the art of mastering silence is not about saying less, it's about meaning more. The next lesson will show you how listening, when done with strategy, becomes the sharpest form of intelligence. Entering the 3rd chapter, the noise around you no longer feels threatening, it becomes revealing. You start to hear not just the words, but what hides beneath them: fear, pride, insecurity, desperation. The fast talkers keep moving, filling the air, but now you see what they can't. They speak to control, you listen to understand, and in that difference lies the beginning of mastery. Listening through the lens of Stoicism is not passive, it's perception sharpened by discipline. It's the art of watching the river of words without being swept away by it. Most people listen only to reply, they wait for their turn to speak. The Stoic listens to see, to read the mind behind the mouth. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone can show me I'm mistaken, I'll gladly change, for I seek truth, not to prove myself right." That's the heart of Stoic listening. It's not about defense, it's about discovery. I remember a man who never raised his voice. In every discussion, others rushed to speak first, desperate to be heard, but he stayed silent until the end. When he finally spoke, everyone leaned forward, not because his voice was louder, but because it carried the weight of thought. He had listened long enough to understand the motive behind every word before choosing his own. That's what listening with intention looks like. It's patience disguised as power. Seneca once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." Most people ignore that truth. They rush to reply because silence makes them uncomfortable, but discomfort is where awareness lives. When you truly listen, you learn to see people as they are, not as they pretend to be. You notice how their tone shifts when they lie, how they over-explain when they're afraid, how they speak quickly when they're unsure. You start to see beyond the words, into the pattern, and once you see it, they can no longer manipulate you. Listening is not submission, it's reconnaissance. You let them reveal their own weaknesses while you remain unmoved. The Stoics knew that the man who listens without reaction becomes unreadable. He stops being a participant in other people's games and starts being the mirror that exposes them. When you refuse to interrupt, you force others to confront the sound of their own contradictions. They expect resistance, but your silence gives them reflection instead. And reflection is more powerful than retaliation. I once witnessed an argument between two colleagues. One shouted, the other stayed quiet. The loud one kept talking, repeating, escalating. The quiet one waited. When the shouting finally stopped, he simply said, "Are you done?" and walked away. The silence left behind did more damage than any insult could. Because true listening doesn't always end with words, it ends with understanding. And understanding in the Stoic sense is control, so listen, not to reply, not to impress, but to perceive. Let others reveal their chaos while you build your clarity. Every word they throw is a thread in a web they spin around themselves. Your job is not to tear it, it's to see it. Because in the end, the one who listens rules the conversation without ever trying to lead it. The Stoics believed that wisdom begins the moment you stop trying to win every argument. When you listen instead of react, you start to hear the truth behind the noise. That's when silence transforms from defense into insight. And that insight prepares you for what comes next, the moment when you stop just observing and start controlling the rhythm itself. Advancing to the fourth chapter, this is where silence becomes something else. It starts to move with intention. You no longer hold it as a defense. You wield it as direction. The fast talkers around you are still speaking in circles, trying to flood you with words. But you've learned something they haven't. Power doesn't come from motion. It comes from mastery of timing. The pause is no longer hesitation. It's strategy. Picture a moment when someone confronts you, their words sharp, their tone quick. They expect resistance, but you give them none. You look, you breathe, you wait. The silence stretches, and suddenly it's not you who feels the pressure, it's them. They start to stumble, to fill the space they no longer control. And that's when you see it clearly, the truth Stoics always knew. Control begins not when you speak, but when you no longer need to. Epictetus once said, "If someone is able to provoke you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." The pause is how you break that complicity. When you delay your reaction, you reclaim the moment. It's not passive, it's command. It's the quiet reminder that emotion belongs to you and only you. Those who rush to reply are driven by pride. Those who wait are guided by clarity. And clarity wins far more battles than anger ever could. I once watched a man cornered in a meeting, accused of failure by someone desperate to prove superiority. The accuser spoke fast, his words coated with arrogance. His rhythm rehearsed for domination. The man stayed still. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend, didn't flinch. When the outburst finally ran out of breath, he said only this, "Are you finished?" And then, in calm and steady words, he dismantled every false claim. No aggression, no emotion, just facts delivered with precision. By the time he was done, the accuser's confidence had evaporated. The silence before his words had done half the work. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." The Stoic doesn't argue, he exemplifies. He doesn't fight chaos with noise, he ends it with presence. The pause gives birth to that presence. It's what separates the reactive from the deliberate. When you speak less, every word starts to matter. And when every word matters, people start to listen differently. Think about that. The one who pauses controls pace, tone, and tension. The fast talker runs on borrowed momentum. The Stoic creates his own. Each second of silence is a test of discipline, of composure, of patience. And every time you pass it, your authority deepens. You become the still point in a spinning world, the calm center that others can't shake. The truth is simple but hard. Restraint feels uncomfortable because it exposes how little control most people have. But the moment you realize you can choose when to act, when to speak, when to move, the world stops rushing you. Time bends toward your rhythm. That's what mastery feels like. You no longer react to life's noise, you direct it. So the next time someone tries to rush you, tries to drown you in words or emotion, remember the lesson of the Stoic pause. Don't fill the silence. Command it. Don't hurry to prove your point. Let truth wait until it's undeniable. Because in the end, the person who controls the pace doesn't just win the conversation, they win themselves. And from that stillness, the next step becomes clear. How to use silence not only as shield, but as strike. From here, the silence you've built begins to take form. It sharpens, refines, and turns deliberate. You're no longer just quiet, you're strategic. The fast talkers who once dominated the air now stumble over their own rhythm, realizing they've been talking into stillness that refuses to bend. That's when the balance tilts. Not because you fought louder, but because you didn't fight at all. Picture a conversation where someone floods you with confidence, overselling themselves, rushing through words as if speed could substitute for truth. You watch, not with irritation, but with calm precision. Every sentence they throw reveals something: ego, fear, insecurity disguised as certainty. You wait, and when they finally run out of breath, you speak once, clearly, and end the exchange in a single stroke. That's not coincidence. That's command. Seneca wrote, "A sword never kills anybody. It is a tool in the killer's hand." The same is true of words. They are weapons, only dangerous in the hands of those without control. The Stoic doesn't draw his blade in panic. He waits, studies, and strikes when the outcome is already decided. Your calm response becomes that strike, not to wound, but to conclude, to restore order where others create noise. I remember watching a leader handle a man who tried to humiliate him publicly. The man spoke fast, throwing sarcasm like darts, expecting anger in return. The leader stayed silent, his eyes fixed, his posture steady. When the room grew uncomfortable with the tension, he said one sentence: "You've said a lot, but not one thing worth remembering." The silence that followed was colder than any shout could have been. That's the art of the Stoic strike. It doesn't explode, it dismantles. Epictetus warned, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." The Stoics' words carry weight because they are filtered through thought, not emotion. Each one is chosen. Each one lands. The fast talker speaks to dominate. The Stoic speaks to define. When you speak with restraint, people listen differently. They don't hear sound, they feel certainty. And here's the paradox. The quieter you are before you speak, the more impact your words have when you finally do. Silence builds anticipation. Restraint builds authority. The fast talker burns his energy in noise. The Stoic gathers his power in stillness. When he finally speaks, the world listens because it's not just speech, its verdict. So when you face those who rush, who oversell, who try to bury you in noise, don't match their pace. Let them spend their strength. Let them talk themselves into weakness. And when the moment is right, strike, not with anger, not with pride, but with precision. One calm sentence can undo an hour of noise. Silence, once mastered, stops being absence. It becomes identity. And the Stoic knows that the most powerful words are not the loudest ones. They are the ones spoken last. At this stage, silence is no longer something you practice. It's something you embody. It's no longer a tactic. It's your nature now, beyond reaction, beyond the need to prove. The fast talkers still rush, still fill the air with words meant to overwhelm. But now, their noise no longer reaches you. You've stepped into stillness that can't be shaken. The Stoics spoke of an inner citadel, a mind that remains untouched. Be like that cliff against which the waves break and fall silent. You stand inside it, calm, untouchable, and utterly in command. Imagine this. You're in a crowded room, voices overlapping, opinions clashing, egos competing for space. Yet even without saying a word, people notice you. They feel the gravity of your quiet. Because presence, when rooted in composure, becomes louder than sound. That's the final form of silence. It becomes power others can sense but can't define. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." That's what you've become. The cliff, the constant, the stillness that breaks the storm without ever moving. I remember meeting a man like that once. He barely spoke, yet every time he entered a room, everything slowed. He never rushed, never competed, never raised his tone. When he did speak, people leaned in. His silence wasn't emptiness, it was authority. He didn't dominate through noise, he led through stillness. And I realized then that some men command respect not because of how much they say, but because of how little they need to. That's the kind of silence that can't be imitated. It's earned through discipline, through restraint, through mastering the self, until your very calm becomes influence. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Freedom begins the moment you stop reacting to others and start acting from principle. The Stoic's silence isn't avoidance, it's intention. He doesn't stay quiet because he fears conflict. He stays quiet because he understands what deserves his energy and what does not. There's strength in choosing your words as carefully as a warrior draws his sword. Most people speak to fill discomfort. The Stoic speaks only to create impact. Every word carries weight because it's forged in reflection, not impulse. But silence, in its highest form, isn't just about speech. It's about state. It's how you walk, how you breathe, how you move through a world obsessed with noise. The calm man isn't detached. He's focused, deliberate, immovable. He no longer fights the world to prove his worth. He simply lives it. The fast talker burns to be seen. The Stoic glows without effort. That's the difference between performance and presence. The first fades. The second endures. There's a story of a philosopher who was mocked for his silence during a debate. When asked why he refused to respond, he said, "Because my life is already the answer." That's what you reach when silence becomes your strength. Your actions speak so clearly that explanation becomes unnecessary. You no longer argue for respect. Your composure earns it. You no longer seek validation. Your restraint commands it. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True mastery is this: to stay calm when provoked, steady when challenged, and quiet when tempted to prove. When you reach that level of stillness, people can no longer pull you into their noise. They exhaust themselves trying to shake you and fail. You become the mirror that exposes them. Their chaos reflects against your peace. Their arrogance crumbles in front of your patience. And that's the essence of this final lesson. The goal was never to win arguments or silence others. It was to master the self so completely that no one can pull you out of balance. To speak only when your words can bring clarity. To listen until truth reveals itself. To use silence not to retreat, but to reign. So now, when they talk fast, when they oversell, when they try to rush your judgment, don't meet them with resistance. Meet them with stillness. Let them see in your calm what they have yet to find in themselves. At its highest form, silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of mastery, where wisdom replaces impulse and calm itself becomes command. And when you no longer need to speak to prove that you've won. There comes a moment in every exchange when words lose their meaning and presence begins to speak. That moment belongs to those who have learned the quiet strength of self-control. You've seen how fast talkers use noise to dominate, how they fill silence to disguise uncertainty. But now you understand the deeper truth. Real power does not come from speed or volume. It comes from calm, from patience, from the ability to see through the fog without rushing into it. When you begin to live in this awareness, you stop chasing validation. You stop explaining yourself to those who listen only to respond. You start choosing clarity over reaction, stillness over pride. Silence becomes more than a pause. It becomes your ground. It steadies you when emotion rises, shields you when words are used as weapons, and gives you the space to act with intention rather than impulse. You no longer need to prove yourself in every conversation. Your composure speaks for you. There is quiet power in restraint. The person who remains unprovoked controls the outcome. The one who listens fully sees the truth behind appearances. The one who speaks with purpose moves the room without raising their voice. This is what the Stoics meant by mastery of the self. To conquer others is temporary. To master your own reactions is timeless. And the reward is peace that no one can take from you. As you leave this reflection, remember that silence is not emptiness. It is focus, presence, and strength refined. When the world around you becomes loud, let your calm be your defense. Let your patience be the force that unsettles those who rely on chaos. And when you finally choose to speak, let your words carry the weight of stillness behind them. The wise do not speak to win, they speak to bring clarity. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to stay close to the journey of stillness and strength. Each reflection will take you deeper into the power of self-mastery. And before you go, write "stay silent" in the comments. Let it be your reminder that silence is not surrender, but a quiet victory over the noise. Carry this calm with you. Choose silence when others rush to shout. Let your stillness unsettle those who mistake volume for power. Because true strength is not in being heard first, but in being understood last. Stay steady, stay silent, and I'll meet you in the next reflection, where patience sharpens into clarity and calm becomes unshakable power.